The power of the pen in the governor's hand. Ahead on Face the State, Governor Mike DeWine signed the 6,000-page state operating budget, ensuring a major income tax cut and funding for a Cleveland Browns stadium. But he also vetoed property tax reform, he says, to protect Ohio students. I'll break it down with our reporter roundtable. Also, we just passed the 4th of July, but Ohio is already celebrating America's 250th birthday. How you can join the party. Plus, preparing Columbus for the future by updating a zoning code from way in the past. Phase 2 of the Zone In initiative is kicking in. Face the State starts now.
This budget continues our historic investment in children, in mental health, in public safety, in our state parks, in our water, in our workforce, and in our future. Stronger, healthier families contribute to a stronger, healthier Ohio.
That's Governor Mike DeWine the morning after signing the 2-year, $60 billion state operating budget. He approved major measures in it, but also used his veto pen on 67 line items. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. Governor DeWine signed the $60 billion bill into law Monday night, just minutes before the midnight deadline. Now we'll see if the General Assembly tries to override any of his vetoes. The governor approved the $1.1 billion income tax cut proposed by Republicans. It will lower the top income tax rate of 3.5% to a flat tax rate of 2.75% over 2 years. So it helps those making more than $100,000 a year. DeWine said he signed it because he believes it will help married couples in the state. He also said he acknowledges that Ohioans are clamoring for property tax relief, but he vetoed several provisions in the budget that would have provided that. He explained why.
I'm an optimist, but as I looked at those and imposing those right away in this budget, all of them, I felt that this was not going to be good for our students. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is our students, and I felt that created a real problem.
The governor vetoed a line item that would have capped the amount of revenue school districts could carry over to the next year at 40%. Under the Republican plan, districts would have to give any amount over that back to property owners in tax relief, with exceptions for capital improvement projects. The governor also vetoed a provision that would ban schools and local governments from levying certain property taxes, including emergency levies, without voter approval. The governor said he is forming a working group to come up with long-term solutions for property tax relief. DeWine also approved the plan to give $600 million of the $1.7 billion set aside from the state's $4.8 billion unclaimed funds program for a new stadium for the Cleveland Browns. He says he can support it because it doesn't use general fund tax dollars, and the other $1.1 billion set aside will be able to help other major sports teams, minor league teams, theaters, symphonies, and cultural facilities.
My criteria is it had to be holistic, it had to be universal, but it also would not spend money out of the general fund that directly competes with education, directly competes with mental health.
Republican leaders who ushered the operating budget through the legislature reacted quickly to the governor's vetoes. In a joint statement, Senate President Rob McCauley and Senate Finance Chairman Jerry Serino said they appreciate the governor's support for the flat income tax. Then they say, yet it is puzzling that at a time when Ohioans are demanding a reduction in their property tax burden, the governor vetoed all of the General Assembly's reforms, which would have contained the rate of growth of property tax across the state, added more accountability to local taxing subdivisions, and would have created more ballot transparency to levies. Democratic leaders also reacted, saying they appreciate the governor vetoing some of the, but the budget is still fundamentally broken. New House Minority Leader Donnie Isaacson said, quote, "It underfunds our schools, leaves Medicaid and public health systems vulnerable, and ignores skyrocketing property taxes that are crushing working families." Meanwhile, Republicans found room for a $600 million handout to the billionaire owners of the Cleveland Browns. Joining me now to discuss the budget are Jeremy Pelzer, politics reporter with Cleveland.com and The Plain Dealer, and Joe Ingles, reporter and producer with the Ohio Public Radio and Television State House News Bureau. Both of you, thanks for being here again, as we've done in the past. Appreciate it. So let's start with this. Just what's your big takeaway from the governor's actions on the budget?
I think his actions were consistent with his philosophy as he has put it forward in previous budgets. He focused on the education part of it, he focused on the health part of it, the mental health part of it, and those were things that he has put money toward in previous budgets. And so I think it was consistent with what he would like to leave someday as his legacy.
And focus on the kids.
Focus on the kids.
How about for you, Jeremy? What was the big thing you took away?
I think this illustrates the gap in the Republican Party between more old school establishment conservatives like Mike DeWine and the newer breed of Republicans like state lawmakers and Republicans like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's looking to take Governor DeWine's job next year. I think this would be a budget that Governor Ramaswamy would be proud to sign. But instead, you have Governor DeWine in there, who issued 67 vetoes, which is a lot of vetoes.
I think the most he ever did before.
That is correct in his previous 6 years. And there's just a whole bunch in the budget. Like, this is an enormous document that's not just about
pages,
spending.
Yeah.
The Governor DeWine also vetoed a number of provisions regarding LGBT and transgender rights as well. Just a whole bunch in here that more conservative lawmakers wanted to pass, that the more moderate DeWine said, no, I'm not going to do that.
And the flat income tax, he did approve that. The $1.1 billion savings, lowering the top tier of the tax rate. And he said in it, in the questions afterwards that why did he sign it? And he said because he can count. He can count votes in the General Assembly. So sounds a little bit like he may not have really supported it, but he knew he couldn't withstand an override.
It's hard. In this General Assembly, it's hard to veto anything that involves taxes, especially income taxes. The property tax thing, some of the property tax measures that he vetoed, they had other situations attached to them that made it harder for him to, he vetoed those because he couldn't handle what it was doing to schools or to communities and that kind of thing. But looking at that income tax, he knew that he couldn't they could take that back from him. So it's like, yeah, he can count and he'll just let him have that.
Yeah, is that what you took too from that?
Yeah, well, Governor DeWine signed previous income tax cuts passed by the legislature. And it wasn't his idea, but he even campaigned for re-election in part on these income tax cuts that he signed. But this year, both he and other Republicans like Speaker Matt Huffman actually said, we're not hearing a big clamor from business leaders for an income tax cut. It's low enough that we can attract businesses and people to the state. Rather, this was passed more out of ideology, a feeling that we need to get rid of the state income tax because it's the right thing to do, that it will generate a whole bunch of new economic development in Ohio, but not in a reaction to business leaders saying, well, we don't want to come to Ohio because your taxes are too high.
And Vivek Ramaswamy has said that, if he were to become governor, he wants to phase out the income tax completely. Let's talk more about those property taxes, though. It's a big issue. The governor, all the leaders, both sides of the aisle, both chambers, acknowledge that property tax relief is a huge issue in the state. People are clamoring for it. They want it. But the governor vetoed these provisions, the 40% cap on revenue that school districts can carry over, the emergency levies that they can put in place. He said this is about the best thing for students. So really no surprise, or is there, that he vetoed that provision?
I kind of thought maybe he would, beforehand, because the school leaders were coming to him with data. They were coming to him with real numbers saying, look, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. We saw rallies at the State House with teachers and school employees who were saying, it's going to cut programs, cut jobs. This is going to slice into the education for our kids. And, again, going back to his, kind of his legacy legacy or, his philosophy. He doesn't want to do something that's going to, in 2-3 years when he's leaving office, school districts are in worse shape, looking like they have problems and having public schools, hurting at a time when he's leaving office after he's put money into so many initiatives for kids and students.
Yeah, I talked to the OEA vice president, the incoming president, the Ohio Education Association, Jeff Wensing, who said that they appreciate that the governor vetoed those things, but the way the budget is set up right now and that it doesn't fully fund the Fair School Funding Plan at current levels, that no school will get less than they did in 2021. So they still also have a problem with that. But on the tax vetoes, any surprise for you that the governor went that direction?
Well, on the one hand, to your first point, the budget does provide a funding bump to about 60% more about 60% of school districts, especially high-performing school districts.
Yeah, Republicans, what's it, $635 million more than the previous 2 years.
So it's not like there is no funding bump.
Yep.
At the same time, about property taxes, Governor DeWine, his solution to this is something he's done time and time again, which is let's have a working group. We'll have a blue ribbon commission to come up with recommendations instead of him just saying, oh, okay, well, I have the answer. But on the other hand, the legislature already had a working group on property taxes.
The Select Committee on Housing.
And after about a year of working on it, they just couldn't reach any agreement on what to do about it. Mm-hmm. So this, on the one hand, I could see how Governor DeWine is concerned about this and what the measures in the budget would do. But at some point, you gotta, if people are clamoring for a property tax for relief, I don't know what this working group will do that hasn't been done already.
I saw a couple of Republicans, or one Republican on X say, we don't need a working group, we need action. So that's what they're saying about that. Now, I want to talk about the Cleveland Browns Stadium. You have covered this extensively for Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. The governor has approved the $600 million out of the unclaimed funds program to go to the Browns as the first grant in that new fund that is being set up. So what now? You've been talking to Cleveland leaders and whatnot as well.
Well, so the way this would work under the Browns plan, and the Browns have been lobbying this for more than a year, is it's a $2.4 billion stadium. The Haslams, Jimmy and Dee Haslam, the owner of the Browns, would put up $1.2 billion or half. The state would kick in $600 million, so another 25%. And the last quarter would be covered by Cuyahoga County. So we have the Haslams, we have the state, and now we just need to find out what the county's going to do. Now, County Executive Chris Ronayne has basically said, over my dead body. But at the same time, there are some county council members who are open to talking about it. So that's really where we're at now, is to see where that local funding will come from before. And the Browns want to move on this. Like, they want this facility open in time for the 2029 NFL season. So, it's not like they have unlimited time now to find an answer.
These stadiums don't go up quickly, that's for sure. And Joe, you've kind of an engaging reaction to this as well from the other side. What have people been saying about, in opposition to it?
Well, Democrats and even some Republicans are coming out saying that they don't think that the investment in the Browns is a good thing right now. And they definitely don't like the idea of, a lot of them don't like the idea of rating the funds, the unclaimed funds, because they feel like those are funds that belong to Ohioans rightly, and they should go back to Ohioans, even though a lot of that money never really gets claimed. But, and there's also lawsuits. Let's remember that we've got already a former state attorney general and a former state lawmaker who have said that they are going to bring a lawsuit on behalf of the unclaimed funds recipients against the Browns. So, and then there's the other thing that Jeremy was talking about. I mean, where does the public money, the local money, where does that come from? Because if they don't get that, what happens to this $600 million that they've thrown out there? There's a lot of questions.
If the project doesn't go through, maybe it comes back. I don't know. Hey, well, we have 30 seconds left. Do you anticipate the House and the Senate coming back to try to override these?
It sure looks like they want to. Right now, it appears the question is when. So we'll see.
Joe Ingles with Public Radio and TV, and Jeremy Pelzer with Cleveland.com. Thank you both for your insight as you've all been covering this so closely over the last few months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, coming up next on Face the State, it's never too early to celebrate a birthday, especially a really big one. How Ohio is already celebrating America's 250th and why. Welcome back to Face the State. We just celebrated America's 249th birthday on July 4th. It was a great party, but next year is going to be huge. Americans will celebrate the country's 250th birthday on July 4th of 2026. It's the semi-quincentennial, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And Ohio is already celebrating the state's contributions to the U.S. since 1776. On Ohio Statehood Day on March 1st of 2022, Governor Mike DeWine announced the creation of the America 250 Ohio Commission. Since then, the 29 members and staff have been planning, developing, and rolling out ways Ohioans in all 88 counties can mark the occasion leading up to the big day. And you can do that right now by checking out hundreds of destinations through the Trails and Tales program. The Creativity Trail has more than 100 locations across the state celebrating the arts, including visual arts, music, literature, glass and pottery, even carousel art. Also, the Air and Space Travel celebrates Space Trail, that is, celebrates Ohio's achievements in flight. That includes the Wright brothers being first in flight and astronaut Neil Armstrong being the first to walk on the moon. Joining me now to talk about it all is America 250 Ohio Executive Director Todd Kleismith. Todd was here in February, and now he is back again to update us on how things are going and how you can celebrate America's 250th right now all over Ohio. Todd, thanks again for coming in.
Great to be with you, Doug.
Appreciate the coming in for an update on this. So what is going on right now? What is the focus?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, we just celebrated the 249th anniversary of the United States. And so our commission, we have a charge to get all of Ohio and Ohioans involved. There's going to be lots of programs, activities. We've already launched some things, as you've noted. So there is going to be an awful lot going on. Sometimes it'll be national in scope. Sometimes it will be led by us at the state level, and a lot of things happening at the local level too. So we're going to really showcase what Ohio and Ohioans have contributed to the United States of America. There's lots of big stories to be told, but also another secondary reason for doing this is we want to bring the people together. You know, this can really be a unifying moment, we think, for Americans, and in Ohio, we're going to make that a big emphasis.
And that really is, there's a lot that you could focus on in 250 years of contributions to the U.S. And you've rolled out several programs. We do have some video of one of the big initiatives. That is the Creativity Trail that I mentioned a little bit in the introduction. Tell me about that. What can people see on the Creativity Trail?
Sure. There's, as I think you've noted, more than 100 places around Ohio. These are places that really show innovation and creativity. There's a lot of art that's involved in art museums. Lots of different places that feature Ohioans expressing creativity in many different ways. That is the second of what we call our Trails and Tales program, and later this summer we'll be launching our third one. Air and Space was their first. So we're really excited about showcasing all these ways that Ohio and Ohioans have contributed something significant to the United States of America.
What is the Air and Space one? We also have video of that we can show. What does that focus on? I mentioned the Wright brothers and Neil Armstrong,
Sure.
But there's a lot involved.
Right, there are. And some of those are those big places, the Wright brothers, John Glenn, we have Neil Armstrong. I mean, it's hard to get much more significant than that. But there's a lot of other places too where people have lent, significant contributions to our aviation heritage. We're home to Goodyear. I mean, there's so much here in Ohio, and so we're really going to take this opportunity to showcase those places.
Well, before we go any farther, how can people find out where those locations are that maybe they can drive to in a short distance or a couple hours?
Yeah, there's an awful lot. We put an awful lot on our website, so it's america250ohio.org. That's a great starting point to learn a lot about our programs, projects, these creativity trails, the Air and Space Trail, so that's a great place to start.
So is there anything planned yet for the big day itself that you're helping to coordinate?
Sure. There are going to be a lot of different ways to participate in the nation's 250th, and as we look to July 4th next year, I know there's going to be a lot of things happening that are national in scope. If you look at Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, in Ohio. We're going to have several things going on here as well. I know the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has big plans. So it's not going to be one big thing. It will be several very significant events, activities happening all over the United States. And we're going to make sure in Ohio we are showing up for that in a big way.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed on the website that I wanted to ask you about is this big effort to honor Revolutionary War veterans that's going on. It's the Revolutionary War Veterans Grave Project. What's that about?
That is just an amazing project. We've got a really strong team working on that. I was surprised to learn when we started the commission that there are more than 7,000 Revolutionary War veterans that are buried in Ohio. Now, they wouldn't have started in Ohio, but we want to really find ways to better tell those stories and connect these veterans who are not just all, pioneers.
They are the original patriots.
They are, and they really showed up for America during our time of independence.
So is this about like finding their graves, maybe restoring them, trying to identify who's where?
We think there's opportunities for all of that. So we recently launched this, and we're enlisting the public to participate in this. So it's not about going to your local cemetery and seeing if you can find any. We have a starting point. So we're building on the work that's already been done by groups like the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Sons of the American Revolution, and others. And so we know a lot about these veterans. Oftentimes we don't know exactly where they're buried. And so what we're asking the public to do is help us document this. We want to find specific locations. If we're able to fill in some of the gaps about what we know of these veterans, that's an important part of this process as well. So we recently crossed the 1,000 veterans mark there, about getting them into our database with full information, photos of headstones, things like that. So that's another starting point. You can find us, find out about that on our website.
So many other events going on. Go to the website. Again, it is america250ohio.org.
Correct.
Right. It's really easy to navigate and find the different programs and things that are going on. Todd, thank you again for coming in
Absolutely,
to update us
yeah.
and let us know what's going on. It's going to be a big celebration, and it's already started.
Sure is, yeah. So thanks for having me, Doug.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, still ahead on Face the State, transforming Columbus. The plan to create more housing and other opportunities in neighborhoods across the city is now moving into Phase 2. The latest on the Zone In initiative, next. Now an update on a story we've been following here on Face the State. Columbus City Council approved the second phase of the Zone In initiative Monday night. The plan is the first overhaul of the city's zoning code in 70 years. Phase 2 will cover 43% of the city. Looking at this map, that includes the areas highlighted in blue. The Zone In initiative aims to expand housing, promote mixed-use development, and give people easier access to public transit. Phase 1 updated the zoning for only 5% of the city. Those areas could only have produced about 6,000 new housing units over the next 10 years. City leaders say Phase 2 has the potential to create nearly 88,000 over that same time period. They say the city does need, though, 200,000 new housing units in the next decade just to keep up with anticipated growth. Phase 2 will improve sidewalks along major streets in Columbus, as well as increase housing opportunities near universities, hospitals, and other job sites. So now nearly half of the city will have new zoning regulations. Doran says Phase 3 will likely be implemented sometime in 2026 or 2027. Doran also says the types of change they're expecting to see will be measured in years, not in days, weeks, or months. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30.